we are going to teach through Genesis chapters 35, 36, and 37. In 36, we won't be going through it in detail because it's a genealogy of Jacob, Isaac, and Esau. So we'll really be teaching through Genesis chapters 35 and 37. And at this point in our teaching, Jacob has left Padanaram in Mesopotamia, back in Babylonia, where we would say or proclaim that it is now Iraq, that area over there. And he has left Laban's house. He has met up with his brother Esau. Esau was mad with him, and Jacob ran away because we know Jacob did what? Jacob bought his birthright.
He had bought the birthright.
Bought his birthright for a bowl of pottage, red pottage, right? And he also stole the blessing of the firstborn, and his mama helped him. Okay? Told him to put on something hairy so he feel like Esau, because Isaac was going blind. And so he met up with Esau, thought that Esau was going to kill him. But Esau said, hey, man, we got to put this thing behind us. We brothers. And so after making amends with him, Esau said, come on, man, let's go back home. And Jacob tricked him again and told him, all right, you go ahead of me, and I'll be behind you. And what did he do? He turned off and went somewhere else and didn't go back with Esau. So he probably was still scared, and rightfully so after all that happened between them. And so now in Genesis chapter 35, it says, then God said to Jacob, go up to Bethel. What does Bethel mean? It means the house of God. Bethlehem means the house of bread. He says, and live there and make an altar there to God, who appeared to you in a distinct manifestation. When you fled years ago from Esau, your brother. Back in Genesis chapter 28, Jacob had a dream about a ladder. Y'all remember that? That reached to heaven, right? Jacob's ladder, we call it. That reached to the heaven or the sky. We learned in Genesis that the heavens or the firmament is actually the sky. All right? And there were angels ascending and descending on this ladder. God promised to bless him, and Jacob vowed to give him a tenth if he blessed him and blessed his going in and going out. And so he said, if you will do these things and take me back, to my brother's house in peace, then you will be my God, and then I will vow to give you a tenth of all that you give to me. Now it's strange that he said, if you do all these things, then you will be my God. Well, who is he not? You understand what I'm saying? If you're going to do all these things, then you will be my God. Well, who is he to you not, Jacob? Okay, and we never saw this giving of a tenth. At least the scriptures we have don't reveal him actually following through with that. And so God promised to bless him, and Jacob vowed to give him a tenth. Jacob called the place where he was the house of God. And we find that whenever a man voluntarily builds an altar, he builds it as an act of worship, following a blessing that is either given or spoken. But here, my brothers, God instructs him to build an altar and go to a certain place, right? He says what? He says, go to Bethel and build an altar there unto me. Okay? So now God's giving him instructions to do it. Verse 2 says, then Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, get rid of the idols and images of foreign gods that are among you, and ceremonially purify yourself and change into fresh clothes. Washing with water, washing your clothes, changing your clothes, washing your body is how they ceremonially purified themselves. As we'll learn in the New Testament about baptism. Some people argue about water baptism, but as far as the Jews knew, the Israelites, they knew that water was a part of purification. As a matter of fact, when they confronted the disciples about Jesus baptizing, what did they say? They talked about the law of purifying. And there was purifying water in the Old Testament, especially when it came to lepers, okay, being cleansed. And so verse 3 says, then let us get up and go up to Bethel. And he talked to his family, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress and has been with me wherever I have gone. And so he's telling them, I'm going to obey what God just told me to do. Y'all get up, let's go. Verse 4 says, so they gave Jacob all the idols and images of the foreign gods they had, and the rings which were in their ears, worn as charms against evil. Now, where did they get this from? Don't worry, I'm telling you. And Jacob buried them under the oak tree near Shechem. Now, remember, before they left Laban's house, remember Rachel took some of her father's gods before they left. And so, rightfully so, Jacob left as the promised seed that was promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But Rachel was at home with Laban, who they were still worshiping the gods of their country. Right? So she took some of his gods with her. I guess she said, we're going back, and I'm going back with my husband, to his people, but I'm going to take these gods, and this is all I know. Right? And so verse 5 says, as they journeyed, there was a great supernatural terror sent from God. Watch this, y'all. On the cities around them as they traveled. And for that reason, the Canaanites did not pursue the sons of Jacob. You can't walk to nobody's hood, freely without nobody checking you. Back then, them different countries and different people, just like today, they was gangs. You just don't walk through their territory as foreigners. You got to check in, let them know where you're going, what you're doing. As a matter of fact, I believe it was Edom that got cursed because when they left out of Egypt, I think it was, they wouldn't let the children of Israel go through their land. But anyway, we'll go back to that at another time. But when God has you on a mission, my brothers and sisters, he will make people afraid to mess with you. You hear what I'm telling you? He said he put a terror over them people. Don't you mess with them. They're on a mission for me. They're going where I told them to go, so leave them alone. Verse 6 says, so Jacob came to Luz. And those who have been following the teaching, remember when he named the place Luz and named it Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan. So he's going back to the land that God promised them. He and all the people who were with him. Remember, he was supposed to go back to Canaan with Esau, but he didn't. He dipped off and didn't follow him because he was still scared of him. I told y'all that earlier. He didn't believe that he had truly forgiven him. And so verse 7 says, there he built an altar to worship the Lord. Remember, anytime you build an altar, it's to worship the Lord. And they sacrifice animals on the altar, right? Today, we call the pulpit an altar. Come on up to the altar and pray. No. In the Old Testament, an altar was a modern-day barbecue pit. They used to burn animals on it. The priest could eat some of the animal, and in certain offerings, you had to burn the whole animal. You couldn't eat it. Burnt offerings. That's what an altar was. They built it out of stone. Okay? God told them, don't make no steps up to my altar. Come on now. Yeah. So, Bethel means house of God. But in verse 7, he says, there he built an altar to worship to the Lord and called the place El Bethel. We know El means what? God. So El Bethel means God of the house of God. Come on now, we call a lot of different places the house of God, but it's God the God of that house. Come on. So now he's saying this is the God of the house of God. So Bethel is house of God. El Bethel is the God of the house of God. And it says, because there God had revealed himself to him when he escaped from his brother. Okay. Verse 8 says, now Deborah, who once was Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried below Bethel under the oak. And the name of it was called Elon Bakuth, which means oak of weeping. All right. Don't know why God wanted them to write and throw that in there, but obviously it was meant for us to know that Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died there and was buried under the tree. Is that all right with y'all? It's all right with me. Then he put it there, okay? Don't line up with what we just read, but it's what God wanted to put there. Now, verse 9 says, then God, in a visible manifestation, okay, appeared to Jacob again when he came out of Padanaram. Remember, Padanaram was back over in Babylonia and Mesopotamia. Remember, Abraham was from the Ur of Chaldees over there. They were Chaldeans, Syrians, okay? When he came out of Padanaram and declared a blessing on him. Verse 10 says, and God said to him. So now he's speaking to him again in that same place. Okay? So God spoke to him again in that same place. He says, your name is Jacob. You shall no longer be called Jacob, though.
Israel.
Come on. You've been reading your Bible. All right. But Israel shall be your name. So he was called Israel. And God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. That sounds a little familiar, right? He told Adam and Eve and the animals back in earlier in Genesis to be what? Fruitful and multiply, right? A nation and a company of nations shall come out of you. So he's going to have nations that will descend from him. Watch this. And kings shall be born of your loins. So kings are going to descend from him. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, I will give to you, and to your descendants after you, I will give the land. So that's why later on in scripture, God is called the God of who? Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He made a covenant through them for the children of Israel. Verse 13 says, then God ascended from Jacob. He left his presence in the place where he had spoken to him. Verse 14, Jacob set up a pillar, a memorial, a monument in the place where he had talked with God, a pillar of stone. And he poured a drink offering of wine on it. You'll find that they had wine in most of the offerings in ancient times. Okay? Wine was used for a good purpose. Okay? It was holy. We're the ones that abused it. Come on. All right? He also poured oil on it to declare it sacred for God's purpose. So oil was used to consecrate things, set it aside, make it holy. The Bible is holy, it's set apart. It's not common with any other book. That's why it's called a holy Bible. Now, are you holy? Or are you common with everybody else? Hello? All right. And so, verse 15 says, so Jacob named the place where God had spoken with him, Bethel, the house of God. Verse 16, then they journeyed from Bethel, and when there was still some distance to go to Ephrath or Bethlehem, Rachel began to give birth and had difficulty and suffered severely. When she was in hard labor, the midwife said to her, do not be afraid you now have another son. Remember back in Genesis, what was told to Eve, what happened to her because of her sin?
You're going to suffer.
Women were suffering what?
In birth.
In childbearing. And as her soul was departing, she was dying while she was in labor, or she died. She named him Benani, son of my sorrow. So she's going to name her son based on what she's going through. Y'all hear that? But watch this. The daddy stood up. Jacob stood up and said, "No, baby, his name's going to be Benjamin, son of my right hand." And we all know that to be at somebody's right hand was what? It was an honor. Jesus is sitting where? At the right hand of who? His Father. To give a shake with your right hand, to be at someone's right hand, was an honor. All right? You've got to be careful what you name your children. You've got to be careful what you speak over them. Y'all talk to me. Come on, Facebook. Talk to me. Benjamin's name became what Jacob said it was going to be. All right? Daddy got to sometimes stand up and say, "No, mama, this what our baby's name going to be. I'm going to speak over my children. You birthed them, I'll speak over them." All right? Verse 19. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set a pillar, a memorial monument on her grave. That is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day. So you can see they made a person's grave a memorial back then too, right? It says that he made a memorial, a monument on her grave. So we can see that they did that back then. And we know we go back to even the times in Egypt where a lot of things was learned by who? From Egypt, by the Israelites. They learned a lot about embalmment, right? Embalming the kings and having tombs. We learned from them. They were the first to do it. Okay? Contrary to popular belief, this whole world learned a lot of different things from the things that were done in Egypt. How to build different buildings. How did they build them pyramids up to a point like that? Nobody know. The mathematics was something else, wasn't it? All right. Verse 21. Then Israel, Jacob, journeyed on and pitched his tent on the other side of the tower of Eder, the lookout point used by shepherds. Somebody tell me, why would a shepherd build a tower?
See where his sheep are.
See where his sheep is, and what's more importantly than where they are. Where the enemy is. Where's that wolf at? Come on now. The name of the Lord is a what? Strong tower. The righteous run into it and they are what? Safe. You got to have a tower, man. Where's the tower in your life? Can you see the enemy? See, that's a whole nother. See, y'all gonna make me preach that one right there. Where's the tower in your life? Can you see where the enemy is? Are you so low in your life that you can't see? You got to get up high and be able to see that enemy, don't you? I just worked that out real quick. Holy Ghost gave me that one, brother. All right. While Israel was living in that land, Reuben is his oldest son, went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. That's all the Bible says. And it say Jacob said nothing about it, did nothing about it. It says he heard about it. And it stops right there. So out of all the women that Reuben could have had, he went and took his daddy's concubine. Now we know a concubine wasn't as close to a man as the wife. The concubine belonged to the man, but it was different than who his wife was. Jacob had Rebecca. Rebecca was Isaac's wife. Jacob had Rachel and Leah, right? And then he had concubines. He had some children by the maids. But Rachel and Leah was his what? His wives. Okay? We know he loved Rachel more than Leah, but God, stopped Rachel's womb for a minute because God said, no, you're not going to treat Leah wrong. You know what I'm saying? You got to love both of them, okay? Verse 22 says, now Jacob had 12 sons. And then it lists all of his sons and all the mamas, okay? And let me tell you something. When we look back, them sisters was working Jacob, boy. One after the other one. Now you're going to come lay with me. You're going to come lay with me. Then Rachel and Leah, I believe it was Rachel that came and took some of Leah's sons' pomegranates, I think it was called, right? What was it, pomegranates? I forgot what it was, but it was a sexual fruit. You know, they said, he's going to give me some more kids. All right? And so, verse 28, the last verse says, now the days of Isaac were 180 years. Isaac's spirit departed from him. Now remember, in Genesis, spirit doesn't always mean the soul that we'll learn about in further scriptures, but it also meant your breath or wind. God blew into Adam the breath of life. So a lot of times when it talks about death and their spirit departed from them, their breath left them. Their conscience left them. And he died and was gathered to his people who had preceded him in death, an old man full of days, satisfied and fulfilled in his life. His sons Esau and Jacob buried him in the cave of Machpelah with his parents Abraham and Sarah. So Isaac was buried with his parents. All right. So now that we go into chapter, I believe this is chapter 36. We look at the descendants of Esau. Okay? And we look at the descendants of Jacob and the descendants of Isaac. Do y'all see that? You see it, brother? Chapter 36 of Genesis. We're not going to go through it because it's a whole chapter of just their descendants, name after name after name. If you're interested in looking at that, you will see all of the sons and the daughters and the mothers in that lineage. And listen, you do not hear about Esau after this until later. All you hear after this is about Jacob and then his journeys, okay, and the journey of the children of Israel. And so it gives a longer lineage or generation of Esau, so you can study his history, and then Esau is not talked about. All right? And so
Esau is the father of the Turkish people. They are descended from Edomites.
Edom, right? And you have some who teach that Esau wasn't. We'll get into that later. That's not a topic for tonight. But a lot of people want to say who Esau was and who Esau wasn't. But we know that God cursed them at some point because of their rejection of the Israelites. But look at what God says. God says, do not hate your brother. Don't hate Esau because he's your brother. Okay, talking about the nation as a whole. And we'll get into that. I don't want to get ahead of myself. That's why I stopped there. Chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. Chapter 36, we're definitely not going to go through all of that because it just lists the generations or the descendants of Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. 37. So Jacob, now his name is called Israel, lived in the land where his father Isaac had been a stranger or foreigner, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. And then we go down to verse 3. Now Israel, Jacob, loved Joseph more than all his children because he was the son of his old age. Now, remember now, Joseph was Jacob's favorite, but watch this. Benjamin was actually the youngest, and we all know today that the baby is always a favorite, right?
Yeah.
But he favored Joseph, although Benjamin was actually the baby of the bunch. And so when Joseph was born, that was an important time to Jacob, okay? And so it says, now Israel, Jacob loved Joseph more than all his children. That's not a good thing to favor your children, but anyway, because you're going to see what's going to happen in this story. Because he was the son of his old age and made him a distinct, watch this, multicolored tunic. So he made him this special coat because he was his favorite son. Now, what do you think the rest of the sons going to think?
They got jealous.
they got jealous, right? His brothers saw that their father loved Joseph more than his brother, so they hated him and could not find it within themselves to speak to him on friendly terms. Now Jacob done caused a mess, not only with him and his brother Esau, now he causing a problem in his own family. Go ahead, brother.
There was a reason for that. Because the last wife that he had didn't have any children until Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
And she was his favorite wife. That's why Joseph became the favorite.
Mm-hmm.
And
the scriptures also said because they had him in his old age.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And he was blind when he was declaring the blessing that was supposed to be given to the oldest son by tribal law.
Right.
When they
right.
brought,
okay. You're talking about Isaac.
Yeah. When they brought the sons for him, he felt this one. He felt that because he was blind. He felt this one. He felt that one. And he knew his son. He knew that the oldest son had been put on the right and the youngest son put on the left. So when he was getting ready to bless him, cross his hands.
Oh, you're talking about with Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh and Ephraim, yeah. You got it.
And they were the offspring of Joseph.
Mm-hmm. That's good. You've been reading your Bible now. I see it. And so, watch this. Not only did they hate him, watch this, my brother.
Mm.
Now Joseph dreams a dream. Now y'all know people hate dreamers, right? And he told it to his brothers. Now they already hated him. Now it says, and they hated him even more. Because now you done came to me with your dream. We already don't like you. Now you coming to us with a dream that God gonna bless you. Here, let's see what the dream is. He said to them, please listen to the details of this dream which I have dreamed. So now you're just gonna get detailed with it, right?
Mm.
Obviously, he didn't know they didn't like him, because I would have never told nobody who don't like me what he's about to tell them. Please listen to the details of this dream which I have dreamed. We brothers were binding sheaves of grain stalks in the field, and lo, my sheaf suddenly got up and stood upright and remained standing, and behold, your sheaves stood up around my sheep and bowed down. Oh, come on, Joseph. In respect. So you're going to tell your older brothers that you're going to bow down and respect me. Now, the term worship, obeisance, means to bow down to someone. So you're going to bow down and worship me. My older brothers now, okay, if that ain't enough, watch this. His brother said to him, are you actually going to reign over us? Are you really going to rule and govern us as your subjects? So they hated him even more, telling them about his dream for his arrogant words. They thought he was arrogant. Right? But Joseph dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers as well. He said, see here, I have again dreamed a dream, and lo, this time I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon bowed down in respect to me. So now he giving a number, right? All 11 of y'all gonna bow down to me, right? Come on now.
Well, you know.
He said he told it to his father as well and to his brothers, but his father rebuked him and said to him in disbelief, what is this, the meaning of this dream that you have dreamed? Come on, brother.
Well, as it turned out, it was true. Even though they tried to circumvent tried to circumvent it by selling him off.
Come on, we get ready to get to that right now.
Yeah, selling him off.
Get ready to get to that right now.
He went back and told his daddy that, wild animals got him.
Right. It's coming right here. Watch this. Joseph's brothers were envious and jealous of him, but his father kept the words of Joseph in his mind, wondering about their meaning. So they hated him even more for telling him about the dream. But his daddy said, I got to think on this thing. I can't just totally disregard it. I got to think about this. Right? Y'all getting ready to lock up, Scott?
No, I was looking for somebody.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you.
Don't worry about it, brother. Watch this. It says, then his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. Jacob said to Joseph, are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come and I will send you to them. Now his father don't have a clue that he's setting him up, right?
Mm-hmm.
He set them up. And he said, here am I, ready to obey you. Then Jacob said to him, please go and see whether everything is all right with your brothers and all right with the flock. Then bring word back to me. So he sent him from the Hebron Valley, and he went to Shechem. Now a certain man found Joseph and saw that he was wandering around and had lost his way in the field. So the man asked him, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for my brothers. Please tell me where they are, pasturing our flocks. The man said, they were here, but they have moved on from this place. I heard them say, let us go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. Now here's the plot against Joseph right here. And when they saw him from a distance, even before he came close to them, they plotted to kill him. Your own brothers, man, over a dream, but not over just a dream. What else? Because they already was upset about their father favoring him, right? They knew that their father loved him more than them. Now, what type of child can take that easily? Okay? Sometimes they got you, sometimes it hurts. Sometimes a child can get jealous, even to the point of wanting to what? Kill their own brother and sister. Sad to say it, but it happens.
It's happening today.
And it's happening right today. You're right, brother. They said to one another, look, here comes this dreamer. Sometimes that's what people say to us that ain't even brothers and sisters. Oh, here come that dreamer. Now then, come and let us kill him and throw him in one of the pits, the cisterns, underground water storage. Then we will say to our father, a wild animal, like you said, kill and devour him. And we shall see what becomes of his dreams now. Y'all can type it in the comment section, dream killers.
Mm.
There's dream killers out there who want to kill you and kill your dreams. Why are people that jealous? It's a spirit, man.
Mm.
It's a spirit, right?
Yeah.
Okay. We shall see what shall become of his dreams. If we kill him, his dreams can't come to pass, right? That's what they thinking. Now Reuben, the oldest brother, heard this and rescued him from their hands and said, let us not take his life. Now here is the one who won't have no morals whatsoever, taking his father's concubine, but he the one that's standing up. Is he standing up because he really want to save him, or because he's the oldest brother, want to show his clout? We don't know. But he's trying to save him and said, no, let's not kill him. Right. Reuben said to them, do not shed his blood, but instead throw him alive into the pit that is here in the wilderness. And do not lay a hand on him to kill him. He said this so that he could rescue him from them and return him safely to his father. So his intention was to try to save him. Now, when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped him of his coat, the distinct multicolored tunic which he was wearing. Mm-hmm. So you know they already mad that he got this coat, so we ain't gonna throw you down in the pit with it. We're gonna take it. Brother.
They're gonna use it as proof that he did.
There you go. There you go. When they took him and threw him into the pit, or it says, then they took him and threw him into the pit. Now the pit was empty, there was no water in it. So they was gonna make sure he died. They didn't give him no water, right? Mm-hmm. Now here's the thing. If animals devour you, what are they gonna do? Take your coat off before they bite you? Mm-hmm. And nobody thought about that, right? You're gonna take this coat back as proof. But I mean, unless they ate you up out the coat. Mm-hmm. Now, y'all explain that one to me. I ain't that smart, but y'all explain that to me.
They didn't have Sam Spade back. The detective.
Come on now, they ain't had no detectives back there. Then they sat down to eat their meal. When they looked up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, east of Jordan, with their camels bearing ladanum, resin for perfume, and balm and myrrh, going on their way to carry the cargo down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, this is the one that's supposed to be named praise, right? Mm. What do we gain if we kill our brother? Now Judah must have been about that bread, right? That money. And cover up his blood or murder. Come, let us instead sell him to these Ishmaelites and Midianites. All right? Mm-hmm. And so we can save a little time and a little reading. They were passing by, these Ishmaelites. They were traders anyway. That's why they were going down to Egypt. They were buying and selling. So to buy him as a slave, they're like, yeah, well, how much you want for him? Yeah. So they sold him to these Ishmaelites, right? And it says in verse 29, now Reuben, unaware of what happened, returned to the pit, and to his great alarm found that Joseph was not in the pit. So his intention was to put him in the pit and come back and get him. But he gone. His brothers done sold him, huh? And to his great alarm, he found that Joseph was not in the pit. So he tore his clothes in deep sorrow. He rejoined his brothers and said, the boy is not here. As for me, where shall I go to hide from my father? He the oldest brother. Mm-hmm. And your second to youngest brother is gone. What you going to tell your daddy? Mm-hmm. Then they took Joseph's tunic. Here you go. And slaughtered a goat and dipped the blood in it. And they brought the tunic to their father and said, "We found this. Please examine it and decide whether or not it is your son's tunic." So again, you done brought my son's coat. You're going to tell me that some animals ate him, but this coat ain't got a mark on it, only some blood. So you telling me these animals that took his coat off and ate him? Okay, anyway, somebody might have missed that, but I read real slow so I can get the details, all right?
Mm.
So it says he recognized and said, "This is my son's tunic. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is without a doubt torn into pieces." Torn into pieces about his coat, huh? All right. So his father wept. And in verse 36, meanwhile in Egypt, the Midianites sold Joseph as a slave to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and the captain of the royal guard. And so we're going to close right here. Next week, we are going to go into Genesis chapters 38, 39, and 40, and we're going to see what happens to this dreamer. Okay? We're going to see what happens to this dreamer. Now remember, they sold him to a man that was an officer of Pharaoh. And we're going to find out who Joseph becomes while he's in Egypt. He's sold to an officer of Pharaoh. He's going to become an officer of Pharaoh. Ain't God good?
Yeah, God ordained him as a prophet.
Yes. Yes. So Facebook, we're going to sit here and talk about the word for a minute. This has been a walk through the Bible with your brother Mo Edwards live here at Veterans Returning Home. We'll be back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. right here live on Facebook, live in Veterans Returning Home. God bless you.